Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lube Tube. This is episode 10, the Big O. Oh, yes, we're going to talk about it. Hi, Brittany.
Hey, Jeanette.
So it's myself, Jeanette, and my co-host, Brittany. We're not going to say her last name because she's so famous.
Famous.
So this is one of those topics that everybody's afraid to talk about, that everybody has questions about, and everybody wants to know about, but also is too nervous to ask those questions.
Right. And this, I feel like this has recently kind of come to the forefront because as we were just talking about, smut.
Oh, smut.
Smut is a thing.
Smutty books.
I mean, maybe it's not as much, but
Maybe we're just smutty.
Maybe. But during COVID, Colleen Hoover was making so much money. She's still making.
Now she's got a movie.
Yeah. Well, multiple.
So smutty books are books that tell a little bit more than the average love story. Get a little bit more detailed, I guess you should say. So they're going to talk about things that we're going to talk about today, which is the orgasm, the female orgasm, and how that differs from the male orgasm and how to obtain one if you've never have. The amount of women that have not had an orgasm. Did you know that it's pretty high?
I didn't know until you told me.
I know. So a lot of times will talk to females all day long about obviously sexual health, and the amount of women that come to me and say, I'm really embarrassed about this, but I don't know if I've ever even had an orgasm. And my answer to that is, I think you would know, right? If you would know if you've had an orgasm. So if you don't feel like you've had, then you probably have not, right? So we're going to talk about the science behind that, how to obtain an orgasm, how do women, and obviously women versus women, women versus males, how we all orgasm differently and how kind of what that looks like, right?
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Hey, so my goal is to kind of demystify it, right? It's something that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody has questions about. And this is a normal human thing, right? And to try to create a place where girls feel more comfortable talking about it to their partner and also just being able to kind of know their body and what's going to actually get them there.
Absolutely. And it's not a black and white thing. As always, there's a lot that goes into it, a lot that we're going to talk about. And I actually read this as I was doing a little research. And this is comparing a male's sexual desire to a woman's.
Okay.
And it said that a male's sexual desire is like a light switch, whereas for females, it's more like the cockpit of like a 747, like the complexity that females have in relation to males is it's
absolutely, because think about all the things that can get in the way of an orgasm for us. Did we get the groceries done? Did I move the wash from the dryer? Are the kids listening? Or even if you don't have kids, are the dogs right outside the door? Did the dog just lick my toe? Like there's so much that will throw us completely off the ability to obtain that orgasm.
Right.
Where guys, that's not actually the case. They're just like, nothing. They are focused on it. It's going to happen.
Right.
Right. For the most part.
I would agree.
For the most part. But our big goal here is to also encourage an open dialogue, right? To have that open dialogue with your partner and just kind of you two discuss your personal pleasure and your self-awareness. So you know kind of how you are able to obtain one, because everyone, like we mentioned earlier, is different. Right?
Yes. All right. Let's go on to what exactly is an orgasm? What's happening with the body?
Okay, so this is crazy, everything that happens to the body. And it's more of like a hormonal flush and a chemical flush that kind of happens when people are actually having an orgasm. So kind of think of it as from the start, right? You have your body and you are obviously aware that something is happening in your genital region. And that begins to kind of arouse you, which then is going to lead blood supply to those genitals. In females, it's usually the clitoris, which actually extends from the top of the vagina or vulva all the way down to almost the opening, and kind of some clitoral tissue can actually extend to almost to the perineum, right? So the clitoris is not just that little bulb at the very top. It actually extends throughout the entire vulva. So if you were to Google it, which make sure you're not on your work computer, the anatomy of the clitoris, yeah, you're going to see that it actually has these little tails coming off the side. And those tails will extend all the way down around the vaginal area, which then allows the sensation. And that whole area starts to engorge during this time, right? Engorge, another word for just basically fill with blood supply.
Right.
And become a lot more sensitive, right? And so basically that arousal continues to occur. And then at one point you have what we call the climax, right? Which is also known as the orgasm. During this orgasm, a rush of chemicals leave the brain and actually also hit the brain. And so you have a couple of different pathways that are happening right there. But the biggest one is the dopamine, right? The dopamine is basically that happy, lovely chemical. And then we also have oxytocin, which is our pleasure chemical, right? So it's the one that kind of makes us feel loved and makes us feel warm and fuzzy. So these chemicals play a huge part in the actual orgasm itself. So it's not just a physical thing, right? There's so much chemically going on in the body at this point too, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's also important that we mention the clitoris, right? But there's also other forms of orgasm, right? There are vaginal orgasms. There are blended orgasms, which include both the clitoral and the vaginal stimulation. And then there's also the erogenous zone. Remember in that last episode, we had that person call in or ask about if it's normal to get an orgasm with nipple stimulation, right? Well, yeah, that's an erogenous zone. Some women also can get it on their neck, their inner thigh, just kind of depends on the lady, right?
Right.
What is that show? Have you ever watched it? It's like a documentary where it's a actual actress and she talks about sex and she talks about orgasms and she has somebody come on and it's a couple and they do couple sex therapy. And one of the couples, they talk about how they've actually been able to obtain an orgasm in the past. And that sex therapist actually talks to them about different ways. And during this part of this show, the guy was actually able to have an orgasm just with one feather. And the partner actually just put the feather over these erogenous zones. And the guy could not believe it, like, because he thought the only way to do that was actually like his penile stimulation. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I literally have never heard what you're... Not that it...
No, it's a show, but
Is it on HBO?
Is it called Gloop,
like with Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
So it was it on Netflix maybe?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I only saw one episode.
Oh,
and
yes.
That was the one I saw.
I never actually saw it, but I remember people talking about it.
Yes.
I thought for a second, do you remember back in the day when there was this lady on, I think her name was like Dr. Sue.
Oh,
maybe it wasn't Doctor.
She was
maybe
the OG. She
Yes.
was the pioneer
Yeah.
of sex talk.
She
passed away. Did you know?
Oh, she was getting on the...
Hey, she was old when we were young.
Yes. And now we're old. So, I mean, that's math, Jeanette. But she
Speak for
was,
yourself.
I remember she was always very, like, what a great resource.
Oh no, she would pull out dildos on there. Remember? She would like have them up, show them off on the TV screen. And I was like 12 and I was like, what is that? My mom's like, oh, we're going to change the channel now. Sorry,
Oh
Mom.
my God,
I learned about them, Mom.
I would never watch that show with my mom. When I was younger.
Well, I don't think I was supposed to.
Just an aside, when we're talking about these types of orgasms, I think this is a great thing for our guys to know, right? That we've talked about this before, that just putting a penis in a vagina is not going to lead to the pleasure that we need and that we want. Now, do we want you to be happy? Yeah, but we need a little extra.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Only 18% of women can reach orgasm by penis alone or basically vaginally alone.
I believe it.
18%. Most women, 82%, require clitoral stimulation. So a lot of men, right, believe that they can have sex and they can just, do obviously vaginal sex and their partner will reach orgasm. And half the time, if not more, these women are faking it and they're not actually having that orgasm.
PSA about faking it.
Okay.
This is a personal
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I mean, in some things, but not in this. Personal opinion. I think faking it is detrimental to a relationship, right?
100%.
I mean, you have to have the communication. And also, like, there's something to be said about making somebody feel good, like, about themselves. So, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But no, you have to, like, also take care of yourself. And you you want to have that connection. And when you're
Mhm.
faking something, there's no connection there.
Well, right. And I think it's important also that the partner in most situations wants to please you as well, right?
Right.
I just think a lot of men just don't really know, like straight up just do not understand, because 90% of them are going to have an orgasm just touching their penis, right? 90% are going to have an orgasm, whether that's done oral sex, vaginal sex, a hand, whatever that means, they're going to have an orgasm, where we're obviously a little bit different.
How lucky, you know, like,
Whatever. Don't even get me started on that bullshit.
okay. So let's talk a little bit about, what are the benefits of having an orgasm beyond just like the pleasure part of it?
Yeah. So you're going to have that full like release of all those endorphins, right? You're going to have basically a calming, right? You're going to feel more relaxed. Like a lot of your stress is going to feel like it's eased, right? You're going to have more clarity. A lot of times there's been studies that have shown what the brain looks like prior to orgasm versus after orgasm, and just how much clearer the brain actually focuses.
I was reading about one of these studies where they have someone in an MRI machine.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, that's wild because...
Yeah. How do I apply for these studies?
Oh my.
Just asking for a friend.
Well, you know that you could do it, like it was either like self-pleasure or you
Okay.
had your significant other there.
Oh.
Do you think Daryl would be down to go in an MRI
If I
machine?
know Daryl, he's down. He's down for everything. So yeah, he'd be like, "We're gonna do a study. Let's go."
Yes, but I
For
mean,
the
it's science, strictly science. It was a pretty interesting study because the amount, like the brain lights
Mhm.
up.
Oh, I bet.
Lights up.
Oh, that's interesting actually. Because imagine, I bet it touches every part of the cortex, right? Because every part of the brain is going to be involved in that. Cool. I want to look at that. So also improving sleep. I'm sure you've seen where people just after sex and after an orgasm, they just cuddle up, right? And they fall asleep. That it actually can improve your sleep, just because I think that probably more of that tension release that happens, right?
Right.
Some women also say that it actually can help with menstrual cramps. I don't really suffer from that, so I can't really put in a word on that. But I would expect that there's got to be something to do with the actual hormones or chemicals that are being released to help with that actual physical menstrual cramp.
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
Yeah.
But I could go off on a tangent there, so I'm going to stop
Please,
myself.
please don't.
Okay.
Oh.
So the other benefit I think we talked about before is just enhancing the mood. And I think that goes also back to just feeling less stressed. You have that connection with your partner. That partner obviously hopefully reached orgasm too. So y'all are sharing that connection. And also increasing that confidence, right? The confidence that you're going to get because A, you were able to obtain an orgasm. B, you probably gave an orgasm. And C, you're having that flush of endorphins that makes you feel better about all of this. Right. And then this is something I have a note here, and I've never heard this, but I have seen people, I've had people talk about this. I've never personally experienced this, but how having an orgasm could potentially help with PMS symptoms. And the only way that I think that could happen is just going back to those endorphins and all of that is released during that time, right? So PMS is a time, like we talked about during our menstrual episode, where your hormones are kind of going all over the place. They're starting to drop, and you're starting to feel that drop, and you're starting to have symptoms of maybe more anxiety, anger, agitation, and so maybe that endorphin being released obviously helps with that. Also, the serotonin and the dopamine that we mentioned earlier could also help kind of level that out a little bit. So I can see how it would help. I just personally have never had that. Maybe I need to try that. Maybe.
Perhaps that's a really good idea. Okay, so for all of our people that are saying, okay, I mean, like maybe I've had an orgasm and maybe I used to get them more frequently. Now I don't. Or maybe I've had one and never been able to have one again.
Yep.
Or like you said, those people that are like, I don't think I've ever had one. So like, what are some reasons why this is happening?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that 30 to 60% of women, that's the only percentage that actually reaches orgasm with every sexual encounter.
That's a large, that's
a deficit.
Yeah.
Only 30 to 60% of us actually reach orgasm with intercourse. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's actually kind of sad, especially when we go back to the 90% of males. And that just comes down to people not knowing their anatomy,
Mhm.
what gets them there, because what gets one person there does not what's going to get the next person there.
Right.
So is it clitoral? Is it vaginal? Is it a combination? Is it, the erogenous zones? What is it that actually gets that female or even that male
Right.
there?
Or am I not getting enough foreplay? Am I
That's
not?
another thing.
Right. That is, again, when we go back to the cockpit of a 747,
Mm-hmm.
we can't just figure out how to drive a plane. I think we fly planes. Fly a plane without having to press a lot of buttons and get things going. I'm not a pilot, but
Right.
it's
Well, maybe you'd be a good pilot. I think
No,
you're
I
too
have-
tall.
okay. You're literally my same height.
Well, I couldn't be a pilot.
You know why I couldn't be a pilot? It's because I did not have good eyesight.
Oh, I think it's just also you're too tall.
Oh my God.
Anyways,
Wow.
that's always what I heard. So I'm going to go with that.
I've seen tall pilots.
I don't know. Have you? Have you, Brittany?
I guess I haven't been like looking at my pilot standing up much. You're right. But I'm pretty sure there's tall pilots.
Okay. So revving the engine.
Are you part of the Mile High Club?
Oh no. Are you?
No. I am.
If you are, I want to hear from you. You please send it, make up an email address, whatever.
I think it's a myth.
No, that is not a myth. There are people that have had sex.
I know,
on a
but
plane.
now I feel like nowadays it would be really hard to get away with it.
Well, also that we are big people. Can you imagine trying to have sex in that little bitty?
No, I can barely go to the bathroom in it.
I can't bend my knees in there.
Well, that's because you have a rod in your...
I know. Well, whatever. Besides having a rod in my knee, leg, / whatever, I don't think even before that, I had a hard time like getting in that bathroom.
Yeah.
How do you have sex
First of all,
in there?
people that have never met us in person, you're making us sound like we're like like an ogre, like Fiona from Shrek.
She's short.
How do you know? Have you seen her in person?
Know. That's what I get.
Is she a pilot? Jesus, Jack. God. Okay, let's come back. Okay, back to it. So some barriers. I know there's physical things that can cause issues.
Yes.
I know there are like medical conditions.
Sure.
What was the one we were talking about?
Lichen sclerosis.
Lichens. Yeah.
So lichen sclerosis is also known as hypertrophy of the skin of the vulva area, and it can cause the whole anatomy in the vulva to actually change, which then creates less sensitivity. It can be very uncomfortable for a lot of our women. It's very itchy.
Right.
It is very thin skin because the treatment we use is, well, there's lots of treatments, but most commonly is steroids. And so steroid cream then thins the skin, which then creates an environment that's not suitable for, intercourse a lot of times because it is so uncomfortable.
Right. And then those hormonal changes we've talked about before with the vaginal dryness.
Absolutely.
That can be a barrier. Definitely.
Yeah, because that skin is so thin from the lack of estrogen, which then leads to it actually hurts to have sex rather than you're not even thinking of it actually feeling good.
And there's other medications that can cause a like decrease in libido.
Oh yeah,
right?
antidepressants, huge. Most common ones are going to be like Celexa or citalopram, Lexapro, S-citalopram, Zoloft can also do that, Prozac. These are all medications that are commonly used for anxiety, depression, and they can absolutely cause a decreased libido, but also decreased ability to orgasm. And if this is the case, so say your whole life you've been able to have an orgasm, and then you get put on these medications, and now you're not able to obtain one, or you have no libido or no sex drive, talk to your provider, because there are lots of medications out there that don't have this side effect that are still used for the same thing. And if you want to know more about that, you can kind of message us on the side and we can kind of give you some ideas of what to ask for and what to talk to your provider about.
Yeah. And then the big one too, as we mature, fatigue becomes an issue, right?
For sure.
When we were younger, we were ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely.
And then life hits you in the face and
work, waking up early, going to bed early because you're exhausted. Like, when do you try to fit that in, right? Do you have to schedule sex? I mean, some people do. I have friends that schedule it. They have it literally on their family calendar. That kind of takes the spontaneity away, but
that works for some people.
If it works for them, that works for them, right? So everybody is different, but finding that time in a busy lifestyle can absolutely kind of cause issues with trying to obviously maintain or obtain the orgasm.
Right. And then we have the psychological And there's the stress. There's my body doesn't look good, or it doesn't look as good as it used to.
Right.
And that kind of snowballs into self-esteem issues. If somebody has had a history of any sort of abuse, I mean, that can certainly weigh very, very heavy.
Absolutely. And the abuse part is something you have got to get help on, right? Like, if you have a history of this, you have got to reach out to a therapist, a sex therapist, a physical therapist who specializes in the pelvic floor, like somebody to help you with this, because it probably will be a whole lot harder for you to obtain an orgasm due to this abuse, just because of your fear, right? The fear is going to absolutely get in the way of that.
Yeah, definitely. And that can also be said. Let's say that you're in a relationship with somebody and maybe it's new.
Okay.
And you are intimate for the first time, and it's just, you trust them, but you don't fully trust them because you haven't had enough time with them, or you've had this history of sexual abuse.
Sure.
And I think that's when, and even outside of, if you have never had abuse and you just aren't feeling like that connected, you have to communicate, right?
Without a doubt.
And I think that's where some relationships fall to the waste, that they're no longer like, that's not the important thing, right? We have our kids, or we have our work, and they forget, like, I need to communicate with my partner, and I need to have that connection, or
that communication is key. I mean, I don't know how many women I talk to a day that when I ask them if they're sexually active and they're in an active relationship, they're either married or been together with the same person for a while, and they tell me it's been a year or 2 years since they last had sex. And the answer is usually, oh, I don't know. We just don't talk about it anymore. We just don't really have that feeling like we have to do that anymore. It's just not a part of our normal life. And maybe that works for a lot of people. Maybe it does, right? But I also wonder if it's just because there's a lack of communication there, right? And talking to your partner about it.
And there are a few things that are deeper than the connection that you have.
Right. Very few, right? Because if that connection, like you said, is not there, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to obtain that orgasm for a female, right? For a female. Are there some times where you could just go have a one-night stand and have a great time? Girls, I'm not saying you can't, right? I'm not saying that is not abnormal. That is very normal, because a lot of times that can be freeing for a lot of women too, because there is no strings attached, right? But I think that also comes down to your comfort level of your own body, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel in your own shoes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that actually brings up another topic of bringing sex toys into the conversation.
Yes.
Or, as we have talked about many times, lube. Please.
Lube too.
Just, yes. And then you've told me about this chair, Jeanette. You need to talk about it just a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm part of this group on Facebook, and it's actually a physician assistant mom group. And it's so funny, but it just keeps popping up on everyone's Facebook feed because I think most people are talking about it, but it's actually like this sex chair. And it looks like they call it a quote yoga chair, right? It's not a yoga chair, Brittany. It's basically like this foam chair that is, it kind of swoops down, right? And supposedly you can try a whole bunch of different positions on this chair. And it is selling for like $500. Like, this chair is expensive. And I'm not kidding. It is all over this PA mom group.
That's
like
hilarious.
People have owned it. People are putting it up on their Facebook because it's like a picture of it, a screenshot, because people are selling it on their marketplace. First of all, I'm not buying a marketplace sex chair. I don't know about you, but I'm not buying a marketplace sex toy. I'm not buying a marketplace sex chair.
Do you remember the Beyonce music video? I think it was for Partition. I don't know. It's a Partition. Like it was like a very like sultry song.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure she was on one of those chairs.
Oh, she probably was. Yeah. And this is like all over. Now Wayfair sells it. It was even on.
Oh my God.
What is it called?
What?
It's like a place. Temu.
Shut up.
Temu has one.
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's also on our website. So if anybody wants to check that out, it is on the website. So
yes. So I'm going to not only talk about the chair, but we also have a few sex toys too that we also have some links on, right? There's quite a few things that we can also chat about that will actually help in the bedroom since you brought up sex toys. A lot of times clitoral stimulation is the key for most females, like we mentioned earlier. So buying something that it's either a vibratory effect, a suctioning effect, those two things are usually what clitoral stimulation is about, right? And there's lots of ones on the market, which obviously I know this is all a whole like, oh my God, TMI, but there's some really great things out there that I think women need to talk about. And that's what they're there for. I mean, there's a whole market on sex toys and it's a huge market because of sometimes they're necessary. A lot of times, right?
Right. Definitely. Outside of that, there are quote unquote treatments. So we've talked about hormone replacement, how that can help.
Yes.
I know you've touched on the O shot. I don't know if you want to talk about it again.
Yeah. So the O shot is something that I actually do for quite a few of our patients at the clinic. And it's for women that have the inability to maybe maintain an orgasm at all, or be able to obtain as strong as orgasm as they used to, or maybe it takes them a little bit longer than it used to get an orgasm. It's literally where I draw your blood. I spin it down in a centrifuge and I quite literally inject it into your clitoral hood. So what does that mean? So you have your little ball of tissue, that's the clitoris. And then you almost have like this little Red Riding Hood, like a hood, and it kind of covers the clitoris. And it's more of like helps us so we're not stimulated all day long walking around in our underwear, but that hood just kind of covers it and protects that clitoris. And we actually inject it into that hood just right below it where it meets the clitoral bulb, right? And then what I do is then I take a little about 5 cc's and I'm able to inject it right inside the vagina. And this is actually what they call the G spot, right? So those ladies out there that get internal orgasms from vaginal stimulation, this is because of the G spot, right? The little bundle of nerves that can sit right there. So I inject both of those places, and studies show that it is supposed to increase the ability to orgasm and the basically the height of an orgasm. So yeah, had some success with it.
As you're explaining this, I literally was envisioning Little Red Riding Hood. Maybe it's because it's around Halloween. That must be why.
Well, what did I say? I said Little Red Riding Hood, right?
Did you?
I did. It's like little Red Riding Hood.
Okay, so I was ignoring you.
No.
Okay, that's typical.
That's really nice. Okay, so that sounds really painful, right? Like getting needles in your vagina, getting needles in your clitoris, right? So there's a couple different ways we can do this. When I went to training, the method to numb it was to numb it with a lidocaine shot. Doesn't that sound freaking terrible?
That sounds counterproductive.
Yeah. So I don't do that. I do more of like a
topical.
It's like a topical treatment. It has a couple of different medications in it that numb the area. I leave that on for anywhere from about 10 to 15 minutes. And that does a really good job of numbing it. So if you've ever had a O shot, hopefully your pain was very much controlled because it should hurt almost little to nothing.
Okay. And then I know we talked about the natural supplements. There's that particular one with Bonafide that you said.
Yeah, Restella. Yeah, it's a great option.
Yeah.
And it's a natural supplement that you take. You can take up to 2 pills a day. Like I said last time, I've had a few women that have had to back it off to 1 a day because it actually heightens their libido too much, right? Awesome, right? But yeah, I've had this be really successful for quite a bit of my ladies.
And then earlier, we were also talking about how there's certain medications that are used for depression, anxiety, that maybe you need to consider switching to something different.
Yep.
Or at least trialing, taking that away.
Yep.
In the right way.
Sure. Yeah. Don't just stop these.
No.
So, seek medical provider advice prior to just stopping them. Titrating off. Sometimes even a lower dose can allow you to have some control over that. So that's not that's a good option. But yeah, there's actually there's those meds out. Have you heard of any of those medications that are prescribed to help with orgasm? And also, it's actually not orgasm. It's to help with libido. These medications are not given for orgasm. So I don't want you to ever be given this prescription in hopes that it's going to help your orgasm. It's actually to help with libido and your desire to have sex. But I have never in my whole career been able to get these covered by insurance.
Right.
Never.
Well, and this is interesting. And here's a soapbox for
go.
Everybody listening. But everybody knows about the little blue pill for our men, right? There are ways that that are gentlemen can fix their erectile dysfunction. That is usually like the cause for not being able to come to completion, right?
Yep,
So
for sure.
So these medications are helping with blood flow, getting to the right place.
Yes.
And are these covered by insurance? Yes,
Sometimes,
of course.
And if they're not, guess how cheap they are to get now. That's what I'm looking up right now as you talk, actually.
Well, and the research that has gone into fixing the male problem,
so true.
when you compare it to the research that has gone into fixing the female problem. And why is that like that?
Yeah. Why is it?
If I had the answer, there is no answer. The answer, actually, there is a pretty concrete answer. I mean, you could look at our politics right now if you really wanted to. But like that's not what this podcast is for.
This is not that podcast.
No.
Okay, guess what? So if I was to go and get sildenafil, right? Which is what? Viagra.
Yes.
If I was to go get that filled and I wanted to get 30 days of that, right? So a 30-day supply, which would be $9.56 using the GoodRx coupon, right? And that's 100 milligram, which most men are not started out on 100. They're started out on a 50.
Yeah.
And so you could have that. So that could actually get you 60 of them for $10, right? So now let's look up what is the one that's very common. It's that Addy, right? Yeah. ADDYI. Addy for females, right? Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
$849.28.
What? Like what?
Isn't that crazy?
And on top of that, these medications for our women, you can't drink alcohol.
No, you cannot.
Right?
No, you cannot. You will
Which, you don't have to drink alcohol, but there are some people that need the alcohol just kind of like to relax, or they've had a hard day and they want to have alcohol.
Absolutely. Or they enjoy a glass of wine. We're not talking like going and getting like ripped. We're talking about just having a glass of wine. Can't do it.
Right. And I know one of these medications is an injection that has to be timed.
Yeah.
Right.
45 minutes. And you have to give yourself the shot.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's super sexy.
Yeah. So this is what we're talking about. Like,
I know.
The amount, right? The amount of education. Okay.
Okay. Did I take that too far?
No, it's great. I love it. Okay. We're going to keep on going here.
Okay. So there's something that I've certainly heard of like, oh, my orgasm doesn't look like what I see.
Oh, like on TV?
On TV.
Or porn?
Right.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's not going to.
Well, and there's no right or wrong. In my opinion, everyone's different.
Yeah. Like some people make noise. Some people are quiet. Some people cry. Some people, get sweaty. Some people get out of breath. Everybody is different, right? Some people laugh because they're embarrassed, right? There's a lot of ways that women will respond to an orgasm, and it's going to be different per woman, right? So I think a lot of times we just think that there's this theatrical, thing that's going to happen, and we have to put on this like show. Well, no, you don't have to do that. You shouldn't even be putting on a show. This is all about you, girl.
Right. Right.
Oh my God. One of my friends who is a avid listener, right? I don't know if I should say her name.
Don't.
Okay. She sent me this picture yesterday. And it said, pigs' orgasms are 30 minutes long.
I've heard this.
And then it said, that's why bacon tastes so good. But do you think pigs orgasm for 30 minutes?
I've heard this before.
Dolphins are supposedly one of the only other animals that actually mate for orgasm and pleasure. How interesting is that?
Who knew you were so into animals? Wow.
Yes. I should have worked at SeaWorld.
You could, but then you would have had to go to A&M.
No. We're not going to go there either because I might lose listeners. Okay.
There are some good Aggies. Okay.
Yeah, they beat LSU. Look at that. So also understanding like the frequency, the intensity, the type of orgasm. Your orgasm from one day could be different to the next time you have sex. It's not always going to be the same. Sometimes they're going to be really, really intense and they're going to last maybe really long and you're going to have a lot of great things that come out of that. And then other times are going to be short, quick, and maybe not as intense. And I think that has a lot to do with, as females, our mind, what's going on in our mind at that point. Do we have 1,000 other things we're thinking about? Are we relaxed, right? A girl that's on a trip with her significant other to a nice exotic resort is going to have a better orgasm than one that's being pushed in between a softball practice and a baseball practice, right? So understanding that your body is going to react in different situations is also important, right? So don't put so much pressure on yourself. A lot of times I think as females, we put too much pressure on ourselves. And that's also a reason why we don't have an orgasm every time, right?
No.
Because we're like, oh, we got to get there. We got to get there. We got to get there instead of just relaxing and letting it happen, right? Because I think we overthink things as females. You think?
Yes. 110%. Yes.
But going back to like the finding that pleasure and finding that technique, right? Self-discovery, right? I'm going to tell you, I told you in one episode not to look at your vagina. That's postpartum, right? Now's the time. If you're not postpartum, well, within the last 6 weeks, I want you to look at your vagina. I want you to find where your clitoris is. I want you to look where the labia are. What does the entrance to the vagina look like? What did all that look like, right? Because a lot of times maybe women are masturbating and they're not even touching the right thing, right? I bet this is happening, right? I think this is important that we talk about it because and then also every clitoris is not the same, right? If you're on hormone replacement therapy, like estrogen or testosterone, your clitoris is going to look different than somebody who's not on testosterone replacement. A lot of times testosterone will actually increase the size of the clitoris, right? So every time somebody comes to me and they're like, sex hurts or I'm not able to obtain an orgasm, I literally go through their anatomy with them and try to understand and make them understand that their body is, though it may be different, it doesn't mean it's abnormal.
Right.
Right.
Right. Oh, that's very important.
And then just talking to your partner, right? And talking openly about it. And just saying, hey, I'm not going to have an orgasm by you just having vaginal sex with me every single time. I'm just going to let you know that's not what's going to get me there. And that's going to be really awkward, right? Because I'm sure and I know this for a fact because I've seen it. There are married couples out there that the female has never had an orgasm and that they've probably been married for years and doesn't feel comfortable enough to tell that partner that, right? That's an important thing though. Sex is so important for a relationship.
Right.
So having that open conversation and maybe showing that partner what, makes you have an orgasm, then that's what needs to be talked about.
Right. Right? That like hurts my heart.
I know, but it happens more than you know.
Well, and I also want people to know that if your partner does have a problem with it, and this is a blanket statement, but are they the right person?
I know.
Right? You want someone that wants the best for you.
Yes.
And wants to meet all your needs.
Right.
And yes, there will be times where you don't have an orgasm.
Sure.
But you're still connected in a way
Absolutely.
that you enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely.
So it's not like, oh, this has to be in game every time. No. But you also want to be with someone that understands that is important and that our anatomy is different from theirs.
100%.
Let me also just say, this is not just like exclusive for just heterosexual. This goes on all arenas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because at the end of the day, it's about that communication. And we keep going back to that. And I also think it's important that you don't have to have an orgasm every time you have sex. That's actually pretty abnormal for females. I mean, if you're able to obtain an orgasm every time during sex, that's badass. Congratulations. But you are out of the normal.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes we just need to hear that as females.
For sure.
That it's going to be okay.
Right. And that we should not feel shame.
No, because that's a big word, right?
Yeah.
I think we do that as to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what time it is?
Is it Slippery Solutions?
With B&J.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
It's getting better. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. This one, this particular one, I feel can just stand alone.
Oh,
because
just one question today.
Yes,
okay.
Because I think that
I'm about to go off on it.
No, well, yeah, you are,
okay.
But I can't tell you how many conversations I have had with people about this.
Okay, ready. I'm excited about this one.
Is squirting.
Oh, okay, here we go. Squirting.
Is squirting a real thing?
Wow. Have you ever squirted?
Okay. Roxanne listens to this. Although I'm sure she wouldn't care if I answer this question. Actually, before that, let's just say, I'm going to sidestep that. What is squirting?
Okay. So
or what? Okay. This, without getting in like medical terms,
okay.
When someone says, "Oh, I squirted,"
okay,
what does that mean?
Squirting is the release of a fluid with orgasm.
Right, but for a lot of people, it's like a lot of fluid, and that's why they call it squirting, because it's like
it squirts out. Yes, literally squirts out of the vagina. Yep, squirt, squirt. Good DJ.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now go and tell me.
So squirting. This is something that I don't know.
I don't know if there's a 100%. This is the
research
correct
on this,
right?
I know.
Exactly.
And some people say it's urine. Some people say like they're literally peeing when this happens. I don't know, because I think
like
it's
a combination
different.
Though. It's not just.
Yes.
And when I remember reading about was that when they tested the fluid, some of the fluid had urea in it.
Yes.
So which is a component of urine.
Sure.
So it wasn't like straight like urine like, coming out. Like it's not like you could smell the urine.
Sure. So there's these glands in the vulva area called the Skene's glands. Okay. Skene. No, not skeet.
Oh.
Skene.
Skene. Okay.
Skene.
Okay.
Skene glands. And Skene glands are what release vaginal moisturization. So when we're having sex or we are aroused, these are what release our fluid that helps us with the elasticity of the vagina, right? So I have read that the Skene's glands are actually what is releasing that fluid. But as small as a Skene's gland is, I can't imagine that they would hold that much fluid. That's my only hesitation with calling it a Skene gland only issue, right? So I would agree with you that there's probably a combination of things. I think that there is absolutely a Skene gland issue or component. I shouldn't say issue because I don't know if this is a bad thing when people squirt. Plus, I think that there is some urination to it as well, because all of those parts are so close down there. Your uterus, if you still have it, your vagina, your bladder. I mean, that's all so close in that area. So when everything's contracting and you're having an orgasm and everything is going wild and crazy down there, then can your bladder also kind of spasm and cause you to urinate? Yeah, I think that could happen.
Right.
So do you think it is?
I mean,
I've never squirted.
I was going to ask. But
I've never squirted. I'll just tell you. You don't have to put me on the spot. Do you think I should be shamed?
Not at all. Not at all. That's why I think I have a hard time with it. Is that I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, great if you do. No shame if you do. No shame if you don't. And not every woman can do this. And I don't know if people can control it either. Because if you can control it, I don't know.
That's a skill.
That's a skill.
That is a skill.
That's a skill. Wow.
While we're on the topic of this was not a question, but I think it would be appropriate to talk about queefing.
Oh, queefing.
Because I feel like as ladies we get shamed for that, but it's typically your partner's fault.
Isn't that a funny word? Who came up with queefing?
I don't know.
Ladies, a queef is a vaginal fart. So it's releasing air.
Maybe it's because of the way it sounds. It's like,
so a queef is where too much air gets trapped in the vagina. And then with either a dildo or a penis, when that gets pushed back in, the air then actually has to leave that area and then creates like a tooting noise.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. I'm sorry, but it is.
I know, but it's not your fault.
But it's embarrassing.
It's air. It's air.
It's embarrassing. No matter how long you've been with your partner, if you queef during sex, it's still embarrassing.
It's not fun.
Should I feel embarrassed? No, but when it does happen, I get embarrassed.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so you'll know, ladies, I don't squirt and I have queefed.
Well, there you go. The more you know. The more you know. Okay.
Wow, that took a turn for the worse.
Yes. I think we have. I think we've done our due diligence.
I think so too. And I hope you learned something about yourself and get a mirror. Take a look.
Definitely. And if you have any questions, we are always here for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. There is no provider-patient relationship formed. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts, guests, and producers of the podcast do not assume any liability for the application of the information discussed. Reliance on any information provided by this podcast is solely at your own risk.